businesses to flourish, and I'm not even. And if there's collateral damage, then there's collateral damage, and he was ready to pull back, and he did. And eventually, that's exactly what happened. In 1877, all the troops left. All the northern troops left the South, and the South was left to its own devices. And Grant more or less went along with that plan to get out of the whole problem of the 1876 election not being settled. I mean, the result was the end of Reconstruction, essentially. No more efforts to try to create a biracial South. And that was all she wrote.
Any other questions?
No, not really.
Any other follow-up from the email? You gotta ask one more question because my phone ran out of memory or something and stopped. So I gotta use the iPad.
Well, do you think that he really was the start of defeating the Ku Klux Klan?
Well, there was an act passed in 1871 where the Klan was outlawed, and they were urging him to send troops to South Carolina. And eventually he did, but it took a long time. Some might say way too long to actually go down and quell what the Klan was doing. But it wasn't just the Klan, it was a lot of groups. Mostly the Confederate Army. The way I teach this is that you have to think about the fact that in Appomattox, Lee surrendered to Grant. The troops went home. But they just changed their uniforms for, the butternut for the white sheet and they kept fighting. Guerrilla warfare, not organized war, but basically attacking the freed people of the South. And there were horrible massacres all over the South. Every area had severe problems, and there were so many of them. The North eventually got tired of it. They just got tired of all the fighting, and so the attitude eventually became, just let the South take care of itself, and so they did outlaw the Klan, and they did do that, but that did not stop the violence at all. And Grant was very slow to do anything about the violence, which is a real discredit to him.
Because once the North sort of got tired of it, unlike in Lincoln or something, he didn't step up as a leader and do anything.
Right, he's opposed to what Lincoln would have done. Lincoln would have never allowed that to happen, knowing that the country could not survive that. That he had to, but that's still the open question: what Lincoln would have done for Reconstruction, and we just don't know, because he got shot 3 days after the war ended. Horrible tragedy. The man never got to enjoy. He walked into secession as president, hit the ground running. The war was started by April of his presidency. He had 3 whole days to enjoy after Appomattox before he was shot.
I thought he was shot 5 days after. But
Was it 5?
Yeah, I think he shot.
Was it April 9th? I thought it was April 9th through 12th. But I could be wrong.
No,
I'm not so great about that.
I think he was shot on April 14th.
Oh, okay, so he had 5 days.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. He had 5 days then.
But that's still not very much.
3 days is much more dramatic.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, not long. Less than a week of what you might call R&R. And he really didn't have a lot of R&R because, but he did. I mean, that's why he went to a play. He hadn't done something like that during his whole presidency. He spent almost all his time at the War Office looking at telegraph information coming back from the front lines. He was a very involved president with the war. That's why he eventually found a general that would fight the way he wanted to, which was Grant, which was let's beat these guys, let's get into a bloodbath with them, and that's exactly what happened after Gettysburg during the Wilderness Campaign and ended Richmond and Petersburg. Bloody Cold Harbor. Cold Harbor is a very tough war, a very tough battle because Grant wouldn't even let the South go collect its wounded and dead.
Really?
No, the bodies just bloated. People. This is how Grant fought, though. I mean, this is part of the strategy of if you want to keep fighting, you're going to fight by my rules. And my rules is if you come out to collect these people, we're going to shoot you. And so, and I've been to Cold Harbor, and right outside of Richmond, and it's gruesome. It's a gruesome thing, but that was how you had to do it. If you'd allowed the wounded to be collected, he had to make them sick of war, which is what Lincoln wanted. You know, make the South howl, make them cry, make them feel it. You know? They certainly had taken the war up to Pennsylvania enough, and all the other attempts to get at Richmond were utter failures, spectacular failures. And here was Grant saying, "We're going to change the rules of war. This is a new day, and we're fighting in a new type of way." And that's what led to Andersonville, the prison being so overcrowded. No more prisoner exchanges, no more officer exchanges. The South couldn't take care of these northern prisoners, and that's when Sherman saw Andersonville. That's when the damage really started. He made the South pay for Andersonville, and Grant was just going to do it anyway.
Now, do you think General Meade, really did not? Do you think that he was like? Do you think Grant was better at like really getting the South tired?
Do you think Grant would have let Lee just waltz all the way from Gettysburg back to Virginia? No way. Yeah. Meade was better than the other incompetents like Hooker and Burnside that had totally and utterly failed and made Lee a hero, and Lee is, you know, a great general. But Grant would have never let that happen. He would have continued to pursue them.
And that's why the South lost the war, because General Grant became the general, and he had just kind of just killed the South, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting question why the South lost. They never ran out of ammunition. Yeah. They could have kept fighting. And I think that one of the reasons they lost was that historians are, you know, they wonder about this because it's not written in stone, but certainly having 180,000 African American soldiers in the South wearing blue and carrying guns frightened a lot of Southerners. They were worried what was happening at home, and they wanted to get home to see what was going on. And some of them, I think, started to. They were positive that God was on their side, and when it became apparent that maybe God wasn't on their side, they started to have kind of a crisis. It's a very interesting question, because they were sure that the North was going to just quit, that they couldn't take a punch, that they couldn't fight, and when that didn't happen, everything just kind of got topsy-turvy. But eventually, when these 180,000 African American soldiers fought for the Union, that seemed to really mess with the South psyche, and people started to go home. Because they were very worried about what was going on. With all of the slaves now running to the Union lines, looking for freedom, it was very chaotic, and they just went home. And there's a very interesting argument that historian Behringer makes, where he argues that the South didn't really lose the war. Yeah, they just surrendered, but they never lost. They actually won, because politically they're going to achieve everything that they wanted to, which was to have essentially captive workforce, to be in political control of the United States. And you could argue that they still are. The 11 states of the Confederacy still pretty much stay together as a bloc. They vote the same way, they elect the same types of people, and it's only the occasional person that can come in and break up those 11 states. Usually it's a Southerner. Bill Clinton was able to do it, Obama did it, but more often than not, all 11 of those states go together lockstep. So they're still, in a way, a Confederate structure to this all.
Like, do you think